Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique Johnson-Lindsay, and I want to welcome you to the Active Listener podcast by Lightspeed. As a lifelong learner and the daughter of a Navy veteran who became an elementary school teacher, education and service are in my DNA. This foundation, paired with my love of technology, led me to these conversations with remarkable minds shaping the K-12 landscape. Join us as we amplify these vital voices and explore how active listening remains foundational to educational excellence. Whether you're an educator, administrator, or someone passionate about the future of education, there's something here for you to learn.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the Active Listener podcast. I'm so excited to be back for another episode. So today I have Jesse Lubinsky with me. I'm going to run down his resume. It's so long, y'all, that I'm like, oh my goodness. We got Principal Education Evangelist at Adobe, leading community and innovation efforts across K-12 and higher ed. Former teacher, school administrator, Director of Technology with over 20 years of experience in education. We got co-author of multiple books on emerging tech and education, nationally recognized ed tech leader, speaker, and doctoral candidate in educational leadership. I think I got it all. Tell me if I'm missing anything.
It's short for I'm old. It's like I've done a lot because I'm old, I think is what I'm hearing when I hear that bio. It hurts when I hear the over 2 decades of experience. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm old enough to have 2 decades of anything.
That is amazing. And no, we have no clue what your age is. So I'm saying no, you just did amazing work in like this much time. So.
Well, I can confess. So I turned 50 this year. So this is a big, the goal is for me to finish my doctoral work this year so I could at least like enter gracefully into my 50s as a doctor. That's on my bucket list for this year.
I love it. Well, I'm crossing my fingers for you. With that, I feel like, bringing you to this conversation, it was so important for me to bring somebody that, again, works with this like emerging technology. We have so many conversations about obviously AI, but all of the things. And it's really important to talk to somebody who is kind of part of leading that and bringing that in schools, especially at a time where we're having so many conversations about what should and shouldn't be happening. So I want to kick it off with just asking you, because you've had so many roles, teacher, administrator, and now at Adobe.
Sure.
How has your perspective on technology in schools evolved across these different roles?
It's a great question. And I think you see in the news, like a lot of shifting attitudes toward technology in school districts, right? You have some that are kind of like, you've seen the research probably. There was something a few weeks ago about how like a study where someone was like, we need to like just take away screens completely. We have the cell phone bans. And I'm going to confess, when I was a school administrator, I led BYOD efforts to like bring phones into the classroom to give students access and create, opportunities for equity in the classroom. Add AI to the mix, and it is like this total like melting pot of different ideas and perspectives. And I think one of the things that I've been really fortunate, or that I'm fortunate about to have this position at Adobe, is it's really this confluence of all these different areas, right? You talked about my passion for emerging tech. Clearly, all of my work has been rooted in education, supporting teaching and learning goals. And then you have this, idea of creativity, which is really at the pillar of the work we do at Adobe. So when you combine all those things, it's really about finding opportunities for the best entry points into how do we support learners, how do we support educators through this idea of creativity in the classroom, while also recognizing that AI has totally changed the game. And we still, believe it or not, have these equity and access issues all over the place. So I think I look at my work through the focus of that lens of how do we improve teaching and learning through creativity, through technology, but recognizing that AI is kind of this specter that sits over everything right now.
Absolutely. And what's so crazy is I think we're in a moment right now where AI is equally as exciting as it is like scary and overwhelming. And so I'm curious, how do you feel like educators should be thinking about AI in a way that can empower them without feeling so intimidating, and ultimately with having that end goal of how can it improve outcomes in the classroom?
Well, I think that's the easiest part of the question you just asked. The hardest part and the kind of question you asked where I like grimace, like, oh no, that's a really tough one, is like how should teachers be thinking about this? And I think, for years, and if you've been in the classroom, like change happens very slowly in education, right? So, that was one of the reasons I kind of left public education to kind of co-found my own startup. Was I wanted to increase adoption timelines for emerging tech in classrooms. And you mentioned the two books I wrote were about like AR, VR, esports, like technologies that could really empower and help students and teachers. Because what we would see is we have those early adopters, then you have kind of the laggards and all the people on the innovation curve where it takes like 10 years for something to happen. And look at where we are with AI in only like 2 or 3 years. So rather than thinking about this with a 5 year or 10 year outlook, I'm like, where are we going to be in like 10 weeks? Like we're that close now, and it's happening at the school level. So I think one thing when we talk about AI in schools that we have to think about is like, there is no kind of covering ourselves up and being like, we need to avoid it. Like, or, we're banning AI and you can't use it. And, if you remember back in 2022, actually, New York City public schools banned ChatGPT, and they did a reversal on that because I think they realized like you can't. And by doing that, you were actually creating a greater inequity issue for some of the students who didn't have access to that technology beyond the devices that they were being issued by the school district. So I think what I would tell teachers is approach this with an open mind. That doesn't mean an open mind for agreeing with it, but at least an open mind to trying to wrap your head around how this could actually help improve teaching and learning outcomes in your classroom. And you know what? You may arrive at like it will not, and we have to shut it down. But I think part of the challenge we've always had in education is there are a lot of teachers who are just opposed to change at that level, or change in the idea of what it means to be a teacher in the classroom. And I think what's happened as a result of all these technologies, and in particular AI, is it does shift our role a little bit about what, if we're assigning things that AI can solve if we're assigning something, it used to be Googleable, right? If I could assign something that kids could do on Google, it's a bad assignment. Now it's like, if I can assign something that AI can just do and there's no actual learning happening, it's time to rethink how we're looking at our school. And unfortunately, I think there are teachers who kind of don't want it to disturb the norm, and it's going to. So I think having that mentality of yes and, right, the improv mentality, that's kind of where we need to be right now.
I love that. And it's so relatable to what we do at Lightspeed. I think we kind of experience some of those same ebbs and flows, obviously not on the level of what's happening with AI, but, bringing speakers and microphones in classrooms that teachers have been teaching for decades with their teacher voice, and then saying, this is a better alternative. This is going to reduce strain on your voice. This is going to help your students hear the lesson clearly. This is going to help them engage more. There's always this road to resistance of, well, why do I need this? And what is this coming in my classroom to do? Where, for us, we're always trying to work on the education piece. We're always trying to hope we can demonstrate like the outcomes to them. And I feel like, it's a long road. It's not always the immediate, like, oh, I'm going to see today that I feel this way. But, over time, when people have the systems, they're like, oh, I do feel less tired because I'm not yelling and over projecting. And of course, it's not on purpose, but it's just naturally what people do in the classroom. So
right. And for me, I think that's where that creativity piece comes in, right? Because we've actually done studies. We have a whole like department at Adobe that does research around education and the role of creativity in the classroom. And what that research showed was that when you bring creativity in the classroom, not only are your students more engaged and feel more connected to the work, but teachers experience fewer feelings of burnout, right? And we know that is a challenge that we already had pre-AI. Right post-pandemic, I mean, we just lost so many people out of education. And now we have this challenge of AI. And like, so what are some ways that we can feel like we still not only have control in the classroom, but that we're invigorated by the work we do and the work we're doing with students while still achieving those kind of outcomes where students are growing and thriving? And that's, I think, where creativity comes in. And that's where actually I feel like AI can actually help a little bit, is coming up with some of those outside the box ideas or creative things to support the way we work in the classroom.
I love that. And I don't think we think enough about creativity in any space, really, but especially in the classroom. I think for many of us, and of course I'm outside looking in, but for many of us, because we know how we feel about standardized testing and,
Right.
ultimately just making sure the kids can read, write, and do the arithmetic, that I know people hate these days, but it's kind of the same way that people
Right.
still think about it. That creativity is often lost in the process because it's like, we'll get this done first and then we'll have fun later. And
Right.
I think
Creativity is a separate thing that we do during certain times or certain classes, right? Like, so I'm going to turn it around on you. I'm going to play host for a second. So when you think of creativity, when you think of class of school, what class do you think, like what subjects are you thinking of?
all the fine arts, art, music.
Right. You're not right. I was a math teacher. You're not thinking of math as a space where creative thinking can happen. But I feel like that's the work we've been doing at Adobe is how do we get teachers to recognize that there is space for creativity in every classroom, in every subject area. And, my team, I mean, look, we're a software company, we're a tools company. So it would be ludicrous of me to say that we would not, at least leverage the Adobe products to model that stuff, which is what we do. But ultimately, what we're doing is modeling good teaching practice that leverages creativity across all subject areas, modeling through our tools. And the AI component comes in because, yeah, we do have AI embedding in like things like Adobe Express or Student Spaces, which is something we just launched, but we do it in a responsible way. And that's the key is we talk a lot about this idea of responsible AI and how do we ensure that when we're providing students opportunities to leverage that technology, we're doing it in a way that ensures that they're safe, but also will lead to more productive outcomes about the way they interact with these tools.
I love that. And I think I would love for you to elaborate more on that because I think for me, we know that student outcomes are one of the biggest things that we're always trying to work toward. And student outcomes is not only about, again, a grade, it's about them having their own voice, using their voice, having that agency in
You're talking my language now.
And so for, us at Lightspeed and even me as, a parent or just being involved in the educational ecosystem, we're trying to find out ways to have these kids deeply engaged in what they are doing. We want them to want to experience the outcome, not just, I want you to get this grade because we want you to do a thing and check a box. It's like, this is mastery of a skill that you love and enjoy or can at least appreciate. And so talk to me about what that looks like for Adobe, as well as what that looked like for you on the, just spectrum of your work with how you get students engaged in what they're doing.
So I'm going to take that in two parts. First, I'm going to talk personally. So you actually hit on two things that I talk about all the time. Like it was just the 10th anniversary of my first keynote. It was very exciting. I posted on Instagram a picture and I was like, look how much older I got in 10 years since I've been doing this. But, for the entire time I've been speaking in front of large audiences, I talk about this idea of like voice, choice, and agency, right? Providing students with the ability to use their voice, and then have choice in the work that they're doing. But also that idea of agency, which differs from choice, because I think a lot of people think that, well, isn't that just choice? Well, no, agency is actually being a partner in the process of identifying what those learning opportunities are. And that's kind of a way that I've always positioned. This is pre-AI, this is pre some of the more innovative tech. How do we get students more engaged in the work we do? And, you talk about student learning outcomes, and there's a part of me that's like, well, what does that mean? What those look different in every place, right? But if there's a foundational idea that students have voice, choice, and agency in the work they're doing, there's a greater chance you're going to be achieving those outcomes. The second part is you asked about Adobe. Now, I cannot speak for all of Adobe. I can only speak for the work that we do, but I'm going to share. So we just released a product called Student Spaces. Student Spaces is something that's geared toward like 13 plus user, age 13 and up, where you can upload content from a course that you're taking. It could be notes. It could be anything you have access to, textbooks, transcriptions, and then use it as an assistant in the studying process. So, create me flashcards, create me a quiz, create me a study. I have a test next Thursday on fossils. Create me a study packet for fossils that'll create me a 7-day study plan with flashcards and quizzes and other things available for me over the course of that 7 days. Because when you think about studying, and I have a daughter in college, when you think about studying, it's not just about the studying. You have to plan to study. And if I'm taking 5 different courses, if I'm a college student, I have to make 5 different plans to study. And what we want to do is let's remove the planning part and give you the ability to focus on the studying part in a way that is meaningful to you as and meets you where you need to be for how you study. Like, I do not like flashcards, never have, but I like quizzes, and I just like drilling. Just keep going, ask me more questions. Like, let me keep going. I'm done with this set. Okay, can you produce another set of questions on the same topic from the resources that I have given you? So, going back to that idea of like safe and responsible, right? It's not just like pulling things from the internet hallucination. It's being given from your sources, and we are citing exactly where to go. So like on that question, you could click and see right where I found that in the books, in the resources. And the reason that I love our commitment to this, or how the way we created Student Spaces, is we did it in partnership with students. So we had like 400 students who were involved in the development of the product, and we just actually met with some of the user groups where they shared their findings on kind of like where they want to see the product go, or what worked and what didn't. And it felt like a real achievement to bring this thing into reality, but with the actual end users, in this case, students, as the partners in the development of the product. So I feel like Adobe's values from that perspective very much align with kind of those ideas of voice, choice, and agency, which are the things that I have always held myself to. So it's great when you're able to support a team and a product and a vision that is very much in alignment with yours. And I think that is really kind of in the right place at the right time. We are struggling for humanity at a point of AI. And I feel like bringing more human voice into the development of the resources we want to see being used that leverage AI is really like where we want to be headed.
For sure, especially because we know that human voice is something that cannot be replicated. Like, we have this idea of what it looks like, but it can't be replicated. So the idea that we get to support it versus trying to replicate it is like very, very important. I've noticed that in places where, and I understand people are being innovative, but in places where they're like, well, we'll replace a teacher with AI, and everybody's like, this model is not going to work. And so I think hearing about tools like this kind of restore the confidence of, can AI be responsible in a classroom environment? It's like, yes, because it is supporting the actual human interactions that are taking place versus the replacement of things where we're like, I don't feel comfortable with this actually.
Right. And I think there's always, until there are like guardrails put into place in the broader, right, it's up to companies to act responsibly when it comes to creating tools in a way that are going to be impactful, but not kind of crossing the line. Like, there's so many concerns about data privacy, and these are conversations we're always having with teachers and students. So we know this is what's top of mind. And in fact, students had come to us, one of the things that they were telling us that they liked about Student Spaces was that they felt it was coming from their work, meaning they did not feel like they were just getting the AI, like whatever answer. It didn't feel like cheating. It also didn't feel fake, or like they felt like it was coming from something real that they were actually contributing to the conversation, to the space. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, to see. We're at a real pivotal point in the history of how AI is, where we can go, right? We can go into a really bad place, or we can go into a really good place. I'm going to hold out hope, right? It's, that we're going to find the right way to do all of this.
I hope so, because I think what it seems like right now is the outlook can be so bright. One of the things that you kind of mentioned way at the beginning of this conversation, but it has been coming up more and more, is what AI will do to impact equity in schools. And I think that is part of the conversation that I don't know that there's a lot of emphasis placed on it, but I actually have looked at it just with my own lens. This is a great opportunity because we are hoping to almost like what people would say is level the playing field when it comes to stuff. So when you're talking about student spaces, or when you're talking about just simply having a tool where a kid is able to get help that they may not be able to receive at home for whatever reason it may be, whether it's, just they have a parent and their parent is at work, or, their parent speaks a different language, so everything does not translate. Like, closing some of these gaps seems like a great opportunity for our students to get the education that we want them to have. So talk to me about how, again, you can kind of use the lens of you and Adobe, but talk to me about how you all feel about equity and technology being kind of a couple.
Yeah, I'll talk about it for me personally. So, it's interesting because I think while you're right, this does open up a lot of opportunities that we didn't have. Just think about what you can do from a web browser on your phone. It is crazy, right? But we also know it's more complicated than that, right? So it really is, even though it feels like there's access for all, there isn't really access for all. So from Adobe's perspective, one thing I can share is, Adobe Express, which is a creativity tool, we have made that free for all K-12 schools. So that is what, to ensure that, and that is free, that has access to AI tools, like AI, generative AI creation tools in there. So that's something that we have made the commitment to make that free for all K-12 students, to give them access to those creative tools and resources. But we also know AI is advancing so fast that we already see the tiered system of access to the really powerful models versus and this is separate from Adobe. This is just a general access issue. So there's always access and bias concerns that I'm going to have, that I think many of my friends, many of my colleagues, these are conversations we have around how are the models developed? Who's developing the models? What are the answers we're getting? Does every student really have access to all of the resources? Are they able to just simply engage with a chatbot, or are they able to generate, video using the cutting edge models? So as the technology advances, there's always going to still be concerns of bias and equity that, we're going to have as we move forward. So I think we're all doing our best to address them as we see them, but they almost come up faster sometimes than you can because there's not one person, there's so many different people developing so many different models and resources. It's it feels a little bit like the Wild West, and it's advancing. This reminds me from a time that we've lived through. It's like that late 90s, early 2000s period when the internet really went from modems and AOL to everyone being able to access through broadband, and all of a sudden everyone had email and everyone was on. And even though it sounds like a simplistic comparison, at the time it was just what? I could buy something I can type something and then something's going to show up at my house the next day. Amazon was I can't believe, first of all, for your younger listeners, Amazon used to only have books. That was we only went on there for textbooks because it was cheaper than buying them on Amazon than it was buying it at the school bookstore. But it feels like that kind of ground shift, but it feels like an exponential magnitude higher because it's so much faster, it's so much more powerful, and every day you're seeing ways that I'm using it for everyday things that I can't even imagine. I'll give you an example. My doctoral work. No, I am not having it write my dissertation. Let's just get that. I'm getting that out there publicly right now. But I will say, my wife did it a couple of years ago, right before ChatGPT was really a thing. And I'm I don't know how you did this thing a couple of years ago, because even for just helping me organize my ideas or just reading through it and tell me where I'm off and where I need to align or things I might have missed, it's just what a game changer. But then I'm also thinking, man, I probably just took down 2 trees just by doing that. So it's the amount of power, that's going into it, and the way our world is changing as a result of this is it makes you cautious about going full all in. And I am Mr. Technology dude. I started a tech company, I work for a tech company, but there are times when you really got to take a step back and just be what is the impact what impact am I having on this world through the work that I'm doing? And, what are the trade-offs we're making?
And I think that is a really good point, because the goal, I think, of technology, specifically technology in the school environment, but overall, is to add value and not add noise. And I think we've seen a lot of technology come over our lifetime where it sounds good and we get all in it, and then it becomes noise. It becomes, I hate to use that word, but it almost like becomes a distraction in the classroom. And I think the good thing about people being a little bit more stringent with AI is trying to figure out exactly where it should
Where it
lie in the
fits.
class.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus
Totally.
saying, let's go all in, because to your point, speaking about cell phones and devices, even though we kind of had an exponential on-ramp when you think about that too. I think there was a long period of people getting devices and having, I know when I was in school, we got 3 computers in the classroom. They used to sit in the back for shared. And that was like, oh my God, we all have, a computer in the classroom. And we went from that to like, now we have the cart. And so we get them, it comes to our class. And now we've evolved to, you get assigned a device, and it's a very one-to-one device. You take this from class to class, you're responsible for it. So seeing even an evolution like that, and now people are like, well, do we really need them at all? Like, let's maybe pull it back. And I don't think we did that quickly, but you think about COVID expediting that, where I feel like anytime before, it was like, well, we're working on it school by school. It kind of depends. And then I feel like in COVID, it became mandatory to have it. And now it's like, well, do we?
You're 100% right. And by the way, just to like date myself even more, when I started my first year of teaching, I taught at a middle school in the Bronx, and I chose this school because they said they had a computer in every room, and I was a big tech guy. So I get into my classroom on the first day, and I see there's like a broken Apple in the back of my room, and I go down to the assistant principal. I'm like, hey, I noticed that the computer in my room is broken. I know there's a computer. They said there's a computer in every room. Deadpan looks at me and says, we said there was a computer in every room. We didn't say there was a working computer in every room. And like, that's where we came from, that to, like you said, COVID was, we had to react to that situation by ensuring that every student had a device, because otherwise they couldn't be schooled, because we needed them at home on a device to be able to connect. And then we were left with the aftermath. And the aftermath was, many schools had devices that they found they wouldn't have chosen if they had thought about a long-term use for them, right? So like, I don't want to like single out individual devices, but there are some that are like, they're great for certain things, but they're not great if you want to now use them in an instructional setting moving forward. So you're left with the aftermath of that and the equity issues created there. But you're right. I think what it comes down to is a matter of like, what makes sense for, like, what's the right fit? When do we need to be using screens and when don't we? And even as a tech guy, I'm not saying everyone should be on screens all the time. That's crazy. We know that in the younger grades, research shows kids need time to just be creative, have fun, make friends. We like, those are things that like have been impinged on by standardized testing, and which, by the way, we do on screens now, and all the other stuff. It's like there's no more bubbling of the scantrons, unfortunately. But yeah, there's a right place and a right time for everything. And I think we're still like, it's almost unfortunate that the AI thing hit when it did, because we were still reeling. Even though it's 5 years later, we are still reeling from COVID. It's funny, my wife's dissertation research was actually about that same thing, like the how middle school students were impacted by the COVID. What are the issues we're still dealing with? And I think that's something we are still struggling with, while trying to balance, the AI issue, while trying to balance, the actual issue of screens and devices in classrooms, and making sure cell phones are now put in these weird little cubby things. It's a lot. And I feel like we always say it's a tough time to be a teacher, but it is a really tough time to be a teacher. And by the way, shout out to the teachers. It is Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers are, look, the most we are so, I don't even say, I cannot say we anymore. I'm not, I have this thing where I say that I'm an educator, but only teachers, the people who are in the classrooms doing it day to day, they earn that badge. You earn that name, teacher. And, just shout out to all the teachers, man. It is a calling.
1,000,000%. My mom is a teacher. I have the most deep appreciation for teachers, because again, it is just a one-on-one kind of thing, and they are very underappreciated. 1 week does not even do it justice for what they deserve.
And I'm going to throw an extra shout out to you and to Raven, your producer, for even making space for these conversations, because that's the, it's a way we give back and support, and by providing a platform to the issues that are happening in classrooms, to try to give voice to the teachers who don't have the microphone in front of them to be able to amplify their concerns and the things that they worry about. So, I'm extremely fortunate that I'm in a role where I get to talk to teachers all the time and hear about what's happening in the classroom and bring those concerns back to people who can actually help develop tools that can make a difference in their classrooms. I mean, it's look, man, if it was super easy, I'd still be doing it, right? Like, I feel like we all would be. Like, those of us who are in the classroom. I mean, it's people don't realize summers off is not a thing.
It is not a thing at all. You brought up a really good point, though, because looking at the landscape of education, the community of teachers, like educators overall, right? But then even smaller, that group of teachers, how they support each other is something that I also don't think is talked about enough. I think, we're often trying to figure out what it looks like to improve a school environment. And we think about a lot of times it's the kids first, which is fair. But a lot of what makes the school work really, really well is how teachers lean on each other for support, how much they create community with each other. And ultimately, that community helps lead some of the change that we're talking about, even with the technology in the classrooms and stuff. It's like a lot of that is by way of the community of teachers getting together, figuring out a thing, and then making an improvement. So the same way you talked about this change and having agency for students, I also think it is so important for teachers, and it's something that is not highlighted enough about how they just work together to get it done. Like, when you want to see how a school functions, it's like, yes, the administrator, and yes, but teachers collectively just get together and get it done. And it's so amazing to see.
So if you're listening to this and not like seeing video, like I've been smiling ear to ear for like a minute, because what you just listened to was like a masterclass in like a podcast host transitioning into a topic that she knows that the person who she's interviewing wanted to talk about, because I'm a podcaster also, and I'm like, that was just so expertly done. So my whole job is basically building teacher community. And one of the things I have found, and you said it beautifully, but just to kind of reframe it in a different way, you talked about community within schools, but oftentimes there is really not space for that. And I mean, I've had administrators before who said, culture is not my job. Like, my job is ensuring teaching and learning is happening, but creating school culture happens by itself. It's not something that I, as the leader, drives. That is so off. But one of the things I like to think about in terms of my role at Adobe is our job is to build community and provide teachers for a space to connect with other like-minded people, to feel like they are not alone. Like, when you are, and I remember this, man. I remember my first week of teaching and feeling like those four walls of my classroom were like the tallest walls, thickest wall. Like, I was alone. I had no one, even though I just didn't at the time, because I didn't know, and I didn't know where to find them. And so that's where we try to engage teachers in this idea of like creativity and community as a place to bring people in, help them find their areas of interest, help them find their people. And the truth is, and I think this is true of any person building community, for a company, is like, and this is hard to say, and I know people hate when I say this at Adobe, but it's like at the end of the day, people don't care about the product. What they care about is the space that you built. Like, you can fill that space with anything. But if you're good at building the space for people to come to where they feel valued, where they feel seen, that's what people crave. They don't crave a product, they crave community. And if you provide that space and you provide the nourishment, both literally and figuratively, because teachers want food like that. People ask, like, what do teachers want? I'm like, they want to be fed. Like, that's what they want. Both like emotionally, and they actually want like Panera. But That's, I think, at the heart of how you get to teachers in schools is you provide them with a space. Sometimes they're not going to have those people in their building. Sometimes that person is 3 states away. So you become the connector. You're going to make sure that these teachers feel seen, feel heard, feel valued. And when it comes to your product, they're going to have a voice at the table with you because they recognize that you, the teacher, are the expert, the one who's in the classroom doing the work day in, day out, and your insights are incredibly valuable and important and need to be heard, not just by us, but by the results of the product that we're making.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can agree from just being on the opposite end of things. I think a lot of times when I have these conversations on the podcast, I am keeping it in the lane of, education. But if you step out, this is how we feel about any product. I think about like I'm an Adobe customer outside of, my education space because I work with a podcast and because I do creative projects on my own. It's just being a marketing
You may
person.
also be familiar with our PDFs. We have those. That's our PDFs.
Yeah. So, all of the things. And so you just think about like, do I participate in the communities? Do I get on the message board? Do I do this thing? Like whatever that looks like. And it's like, you want to do that by way of being in community with other people. And so I think it's so important that, even people that are external to the actual education environment, that they become community with those people. I think that is one of my ultimate goals of this podcast in a lot of ways is as you hear the challenges and all the good that's going on in schools and around education, that it inspires you to want to participate and figure out like, what is my lane to support this? Because I think that's really important. And we know that, with teachers being overworked, underpaid, all the things, that the one thing that everybody can do that's not just like monetary and pull out $1 to, not asking for donations all the time, is to provide support. In what ways can they do that? And I know it's so important for me. Like I literally use my own experience of like how I try to support my mom in her classroom. Like I want to do that. I've always been like that since my mom has been a teacher, even when I was a high school student, because I'm like, just need to be in these spaces like and help. And my mom has the little, so then it's fun too.
I think it's just important to come to the table for this work from a position of like gratitude, right? Of like being, and I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to support teachers and to be able to make things better for students. And, I often tell, because we work on a very big team and a lot of these people are like developers or people who don't get to go and see the reaction, see the impact. And I always say like, in a way, like we get to experience the benefits of their work because we get to see those moments where like a student's life is changed as a result of having access to a creative tool. I mean, we've seen nonverbal students using our tools to express themselves in ways that they never have before, and parents and teachers crying because they just can't believe that happened. And, it sounds trite in a way, but like even a simple, like a software tool can change lives, right? Can make a difference. And I think that's I'm fortunate enough to get to work with a team of educators who've been in the classroom, who've been administrators, who've seen this on multiple levels, and who recognize the value of what it means to be able to be in a position to bring those gifts to classrooms across the world, and to give those opportunities. I mean, there are stories that we'll never know, but I know they're out there, and I know that the work we've done has made a difference. So, when people ask me, do I miss the classroom? It's like, what I miss are the relationships I had with students and those connections, and students who I still talk to now, who have told me 20 years later what a difference I made, even though I thought I was a terrible teacher at the time. But like, I know that we're getting to show teachers what they have access to, and as a result, students then get access to these things, and it changes their trajectory. And that's the stuff I hang my hat on, right? Is like, that's ultimately where I feel my value is. And even though I don't get to know those stories the way I did when I had those one-on-one relationships, it fills the cup.
I love it. I love it. Oh my God, Jesse, I could talk to you all day because one, I love tech. I think you cannot be a digital marketer without loving tech. But two, I just love hearing about this experience because again, we're getting it on all the different sides. And I love that because I think, again, impact is so important. I know that is my favorite part on the Lightspeed side. When people get a system and they are excited, when there are tears involved, tears of happiness, of course, I am always like, oh my goodness, we are doing the work. And that is by far my favorite part. I don't get it often, but when I do, I'm like, oh my goodness, this means the world. So just hearing you say that kind of brings it all together for me. And again, I could talk to you all day about this because I love
Part
it.
2. No.
With that, I do want to move us into our lightning round because I have to know your answer to these 2 questions I ask every guest. So with that, I'm going to get into question number 1. Okay. Question number 1 is, if you could remove one barrier in education, what would it be? And it can literally be anything.
Okay, it's lightning round, so I don't have a lot of time to think about this. I got to come up with the first answer. Oh my God, so many things. Okay, one thing, it would be, the first thing I'm thinking of are equity barriers in terms of access to resources, to like access to tools. I'll say that. Access issues. Blanket. I'm sure there's a better answer, but I got it. Okay, that was lightning round.
Whatever your answer is a good answer. So that works. And that's a good answer. Question number 2. This is a little bit harder, but
I was gonna say I hope this one's easier.
A little bit harder.
Okay, let's hear it.
What is your favorite sound?
I have an answer for this. I have a white noise machine like for sleeping, and it just sounds like a, and I don't know, it makes me fall asleep. It's great. So I'm gonna go with that. I don't even know it. It's just like one of those machines that has like air. It's not even like the one you would use on your phone that has the it's not like that. It's more like air blowing through like several filtered holes kind of thing. I don't know why I thought of that. That's so weird.
You like it?
Lightning rounds. I'll go with it.
With that, I want to say thank you so much for doing this podcast. I truly enjoyed it. And yeah, you should come back anytime because I know you're doing great work. And so we would love to get an update and just hear what other great things you're doing. And by the way, next time you come back, you'll be doctor. So that would be great too, right?
That I can't come back until I'm doctor. I have to do that. I have to become a doctor. If anyone has a higher education emergency, I will be available. Like if the plane, they're like, can anyone solve this emergency? It's like, well, is it medical or related to higher education? So
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Before we end, how can we keep in contact with you?
Sure. So I'm on the socials at J Lubinsky on pretty much every platform. You could find more information about my work at jesselubinsky.com, JESSELUBINSKY. Or, you know what? You're listening to the podcast. I'm on LinkedIn more than anything else right now. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Would love to know what you thought of this conversation.
Perfect. All right.
Oh, and one last thing. I can't believe I forgot this. Partial Credit. That's my podcast. I co-hosted with the 2021 Kentucky Teacher of the Year, Donnie Piercy, and Jeffrey Heil, a teacher out in San Diego. It is a podcast around education, pop culture, shenanigans, things like that. You can find that at partial.credit.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much.
That's all for today's Active Listener. Thanks for tuning in. Share your comments on this episode on our Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn social media pages. You can visit our website at lightspeed-tech.com to learn more about our mission to ensure every student hears every word. And subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, let your listening be as active as your learning.